Welcome to the final part of the implementation of the controller, and now we're up to actually working on the move and also validating the game state. So the first part we'll work on is the check grid, and this is important because we're actually going to see whether the grid has actually developed a win or some other state. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually check grid for a particular player, and so we're going to just make it able to handle either player type by passing in the iPlayer parameter, and then we're going to get the grid and put that into a local string, and we're going to see, firstly we'll set the result, local variable result, to CSEmpty, and then we're going to see if the player is the equal to the CSX state, or if the player that we're checking is the O for the O win, then basically we've got our result is CSX win, and the result is CSO win. So these are what we're going to set the cells to if we do find a win for CSX or CSO. Now the next step is to then go through and try for different types of lineups in the grid. So firstly there is just the horizontal win. So position 0, 1 and 2 would be the top 3 cells of the tic-tac-toe grid, and so if these were all equal to the player, whether it's the X player or the O player, then we would go through and set all those cells to that. If it was the CSX player, then the cells would be the CSX win. So this is so when we go to display the grid in future, we can just display the winning cells straight off. Now arguably this is a calculated thing being stored, and it's probably better not doing such things, but I'm just putting this in for to make it more straightforward. And here you can see I've just added all the other states. So I type in the first one for the cross, and then there's the down wins, and then the 2 diagonal wins. And if none of those are true, then obviously there's not a win. And once that's done, we go to get grid game state to update the state for the game. So now with the check grid done for a win, we're actually going to write the move function, and this move function will use the check grid. And what we want to do in the move is, firstly we'll just check if the game ID is equal to -1. Then in this case we want to actually set the player type, because it's a new game and it's the first move. It's going to by default be the player X who makes the first move all the time, and therefore we also want to set the game state to the X turn for this player X move. So that's the first condition taken care of. Now you've probably noticed my indenting's gone astray, but don't worry. We've got the position now being tested. We're just seeing if it's greater than or equal to 0, and we're also making sure it's less than 9, and that way we're going to make sure we're not testing something out of bounds of the grid, which is a 3x3 with 9 positions. And in doing so, we also then want to check that this particular cell we're about to test, and remember this if statement would short circuit, so if it was less than 0 or greater than 9, it would fall out because of the AND symbols before testing the array grid position there, and we're just checking whether it's empty, because that's the third condition, is that we've got a position within the range, and we've got to check that there's not a north or a cross there already. And if there isn't, then we can go in with a valid position, and then we want to actually put in either a cross or a naught depending on what player type it is. So if the player type is player X, then we'll take this grid position and we're going to set it to the CS_X. And you'll notice later in that check grid, if we get a win, that it looks for the CS_X and then sets them to CS_X wins for the ones involved in the actual win. Now we then set the game state to GSO turn if the player X has just had their turn. And there we call the check grid, and this will actually check for any win and also update the grid game state as well. Now, other than that, we'll just copy and paste that and then make this version for player Y, or player O, sorry, and go through and update those. And then we'll do the same thing. Now once all that's done, we can then pretty much save this to the database, and that's write out the game record with this new grid state. And again, I'll just paste in the version with the extra commenting, the debugging commenting, which is in the example provided. Now looking further down, we have a few other testing functions, the in-game, which just gives back whether there's an O turn or X turn in the game state. Show game, which uses display grid to actually show the current game ID and grid. And there was a new game which does the -1. The show waiting games, which goes through and queries all started games, the games with one move with this player X, and then echoes those out using the display grid one by one, all in line. And finally, the echo player details, which actually creates that player key. Now these are all from those screen design. And that's pretty much it for our Tic Tac Toe controller.